Sydney FC came into the 24-25 A-League season with one of the best first 11 sides on paper we've ever seen in the history of the A-League. But time and time again, it's a player rarely included on the starting sheet that has made the difference in the moments that have mattered the most. Adrian Segecic, not satisfied with his 88th minute equalising goal against Bangkok United to save the Sky Blues Champions League 2 campaign, Stegger decided to come on and save Sydney's A-League campaign as well. A 94th minute winner in prime time at Hindmarsh Stadium to leapfrog the Reds into the top 6 with just 4 rounds to play. Western Sydney become the first team in the competition to pierce the fabulous 5 in defence of Auckland as they, the Wanderers, fly back from their Kiwi adventures with another point and their championship credentials signed, sealed and delivered. Steve Corica's side, on the other hand, need to just steady the ship slightly as the record-breaking Western United and Aurelio Vidmar's Melbourne City storm home in chase. The Bulls let their frustration out on the Raw, the first whisperings of the winter transfers begin to filter through, and the Matildas start to recapture their groove on this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. My name is Lachlan Avil, and joining me tonight is Will Booth. Will, it's good to have you in. I understand you're combating several medical issues tonight. It's a good effort to get on the pitch today.
Yeah, on two fronts. I got a physical injury and a bit of a flu at the moment, but we'll see how coherent I sound throughout this episode. So excuse me if I do ramble a little bit.
Yeah, it's all right. We'll call you out. That'll be fine. Jacob Stevens, hello to you as well.
Hey, Lucky, it's good to be back. I was sick last time, which is why I wasn't on the last episode, and I'm back. So, it's good to be back.
It's good to be back indeed. There seems to be something going around at the moment. Everyone through the podcasting wave seems to be going under the weather. But we're going to start with Adelaide v Sydney on Saturday night, which was billed as this game that would go a long way towards defining both of these teams' seasons. And I thought the performances for both of the teams were just so brilliantly characteristic of both of their seasons. You have Sydney FC under Ufuk Talay, who have been exposed defensively in transition, relying on individuals in moments to get themselves out of trouble. First, it was Devonish Mears here tonight with some massive saves in the first half of this game. Then, as we said, Adrian Segecic coming off the bench again to bring them back from the dead. And then on the other side, you have Adelaide with, just another kind of head-scratching decision. You're starting Max Vartuli in goals, who was the third-choice goalkeeper at the start of the season. Carl Veart makes the decision to bring him in, and it makes you just think that Adelaide aren't helping themselves, which is seemingly what they've been doing all season. And he was the victim of this week's individual errors that cost them goals, led them to concede again at least 3 in seemingly every A-League game they play. It summed up both teams' seasons extraordinarily well. It was Sydney that got the edge at the end of the day, and they closed that gap. It was a massive 6-pointer in terms of the finals race, and they go level on points with Adelaide, and on goal difference send Adelaide outside of the finals positions for the first time since round 2.
Yeah, it's, as you said, it's so typical of each of their seasons. I don't think, you couldn't necessarily predict the result beforehand, but the game played out how you thought it really would be, like in the most typical fashion between these two sides. I mean, we had 5 goals total in the end, just open, like Sydney so open in transition, as you mentioned as well. Adelaide with goalkeeping errors. I don't know, that position seems pretty cursed after Gauchi's departure. I would honestly be looking for a transfer if I was a youth keeper in the ranks at Adelaide. None of them can seem to go a game without an error, and I know it's sad to say, and I always want, as a goalkeeper myself, I always want these debuting keepers to really just have a clean, solid game, and that's all they would be wanting to have in their minds as well. But it's also that pressure. Now it's happened multiple times. It's like, okay, no, now it's just going to happen like that. They would be focusing on it way too much, right? And that in a way can bring it on and make things way worse. But we've seen with Devonish Mears as well. Talay's decided to stick with him, and he really came up big in this game. I think Paletti was saying in the group chat as well about Redmayne, and I think we identified pretty early on this season that it's past his prime, as good as he has been in the league for as long as he has. But it is also, it still did surprise me that Devonish Mears stuck with the number one spot. Really, I thought that, as we've seen with other teams in the league, a few errors in a few games in a row leads to a swap with that number one. They're pretty quick to rotate that keeper position, which is that doesn't do anything for confidence, especially in a position where that confidence is so much of the role. And so Tale's rewarded for putting his faith in Devonish Mears there, because he pulled up really two massive saves in that first half to eventually keep Sydney in the game and go on to win it. And as you said, that's just such a massive game to win. I felt, I don't know. At the end of the game, I felt like Sydney's season might have gone if they didn't get the result here. Just the mental benefit and boost that seeing your team's name next to sixth spot does. Leapfrogging Adelaide there is just such a massive mental boost for the side and a confidence builder. Just really at a do or die part of their season. So no, impressive performance from both sides in periods, but then also defensively lackluster stuff, which is typical of them as well in periods. So played out exactly like that, but it was a great spectacle. And, as you said, Segecic came on to do it. Vituli, I thought was pretty unlucky. That third goal, I think he did really well to stop Segecic's first shot. And then that's probably the toughest, if you ask keepers, that's probably the toughest skill in goalkeeping, is that recovery for the second save. And so he does stay on the floor, and I think he saves that on even in his position a lot of times. If you replay that, like, he can get to that ball, so he didn't really do anything wrong. It just squirmed under his hand there, which was really unfortunate. He could have, if he pulls off that save, then we're talking about what a great performance that is. So really unlucky on him there. I think the mix up with Vreens at the start it just shows that lack of communication and cohesion that you have when you haven't played with your defense before, and it didn't seem like there was much communication going. I think Vreens kind of runs a screen for Vitulia there, which doesn't really help him, and it's just an awful one, like that on the edge of the box. You don't know whether to come or go. It kind of stays a bit low, and he sets up like he's going to head the ball, but then it doesn't go anywhere near his head. And so he ends up shitting it straight out to Klamala there. But those are just so tough. Like, you have to commit, you have to know that you're going to go for a volley and clear that, or you have to commit and head. Even you've got to go for a diving header if he's going to set up like he did for a header. I don't know why he ended up jumping. So tough on him, and that being the first goal of the game really didn't set him up great with confidence for the rest of the game.
Why this game, Jacob? It screams so odd to me. And Will's done a great job of breaking down both the theory of some different coaches this season in terms of backing their keeper and the goals themselves that played out. Like, I'm looking down the table right now. You've got someone of the likes of Patrick Beach at Melbourne City, who Aurelia Vidmar has pushed through in difficult circumstances and has turned into one of the best keepers in the league so far this season. He shares with his defenders the best defensive record in the season. Then you have the likes of Adelaide, as we say, who have flopped around a lot. You go to somewhere like the Newcastle Jets, who Rob Stanton pulled the pin at the right moment, let in Noah James, and all of a sudden that led to this great turnaround of form. So there's no right way to do it. However, bringing in what was your third choice keeper ahead of James Delianov and Ethan Cox for the most important game of your season in primetime Saturday night football, that doesn't seem like a right decision.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yes, in hindsight, but also at the time, everyone was, I think, asking that same question of why has he chosen Vartuli now. I had a chat with Antonis actually outside of at the ground. We bumped into each other as we were making our way in, and we had a chat about it, and we sort of were both like, maybe it's a combination of things, right? Is that number one is that the fan base is now split, right, between two keepers in Cox and Delianov, and it seems like most have picked a side in that and are going, we want this one in goal and we want the other one in goal, and it's like, well, there's one third option, so we'll throw him in and just see what we can do, and then maybe it's also there's desperation, on Veart's part where it's like, well, I've tried everything I can. This is my last option. I might as well give it a go. I might not even be in the job next year. If he comes out, he's the best keeper we've ever had, and nothing gets past him. All of a sudden, I look like a genius. We make finals. Maybe we win something. Maybe I keep my job, right? Maybe there's a bit of that at play. But we both came to the conclusion that it probably isn't going to matter, because with such a lack of defense in front of you, it doesn't matter how good a keeper you are, you're gonna concede goals. So yeah, it seems like a really, really odd choice, and I do agree with Will's analysis for the most part on those goals that were conceded. I don't think it was the mistakes that he made weren't as mind-numbingly simple as some of the mistakes that we've seen Ethan Cox or James Delian or others in the league make this season, right? I mean, that first one, yes, it's a mix-up in communication, but your veteran centre-back has to be better in communicating that situation to his young goalkeeper, and it's something that Vreens has struggled with all year long. So, Vreens himself could have done more there, I think, to keep Klimala away from Vartuli in the first place, and then, obviously doesn't communicate well with him. In the second one, where everyone I saw was going, well, why would you just push the ball back out into a dangerous area? It's like, well, it doesn't really matter where the ball goes back out there, because there were 3 unmarked Sydney players in the box, so one of them was going to get onto it. And then that third one, obviously, as you touched on, Will, he makes a great first save, really good reflex movement to try and get to that second one, and is just unfortunate. So look, I don't think it was the worst performance of all time, and he actually made some pretty good saves throughout the game as well, but it's just one of those situations where when you're under so much pressure so consistently, with very little help from the outfield players in actually defending the goal, it becomes a really tough ask. So I think it does almost sort of feel like he's been set up to fail by being put in that situation, which is a shame, because I think that what we did see, there was some good glimpses there of a keeper that could be quite good in the coming years if he's given the right environment in which to play in. But as Will, you mentioned, if you're a keeper in Adelaide's setup at the moment, you're probably thinking, well, if for the good of my career, I probably want to get out of here, right? Because otherwise it's going to be more of the same sort of thing. So yeah, you're spot on, Lockie. It doesn't seem at all to have been the right call. Leave alone that it was such an important game as well. Obviously, a real 6-pointer, this one, because this could have, as we were saying, almost stopped Sydney's season dead in its tracks and given Adelaide that buffer in 6th spot. But now they have to really fight for it moving forwards with a tough slate of fixtures to round out the season. So, poor decision in terms of the choice of goalkeepers there from Carl Veart, and it just sort of, it's another one of those things you add to the list for this season of things that have gone wrong for Adelaide, and it's, well, squad selection, there's another one to add to the list. So it's all these things are now starting to pile up in the back end of the season, and with all the news and rumours that are going around about Cole being out of a job and things like that, it's it's not particularly surprising, but it's a bit disappointing, because this team's season isn't done yet, but it almost feels inevitable that they're now going to miss finals because they just can't seem to get it together.
So they do have a softer run in Adelaide United, and Sydney FC are going to have to balance their ACL2 commitments as well. So that becomes 6 games to finish off in the last month or so, rather than just 4, which Adelaide have. If Adelaide have won this, it would have been 6 points. You almost would have drawn the line in the sand. A draw, still so-so, just because of the fixture congestion. But now that Sydney have the advantage, if I were a betting man, I'd put my money on Sydney FC to qualify through, and that's with all the extra games that they have to play. Because Adelaide United, you just can't go into any game feeling that they're comfortable. They're going to have to travel to Perth next week and play the Glory away. And even that's a fixture where you're going, oh my Lord, what are Adelaide going to serve up here? Yeah. You just never know. And Sydney, yes, they've been inconsistent. They can always bring Adrian Segecic off the bench to win them a game whenever they want to, which is just crazy, right? Because this guy, we've talked about Sydney FC and the team they have and all the stars they have, and consistently he's the one coming off the bench in clutch moments, just in periods of time where Sydney FC absolutely just need something. And he's delivered all season. And it kind of gives some credence to the theory that, if you have that impact sub coming off the bench and doing really well, you shouldn't, take the bait all the time and just throw them in the starting 11. Maybe the impact sub kind of position is what's going to be best for the team. And that's going to be his role and how he's used most effectively. And you can't really see it changing this close to the end of the season, right? So he's had an amazing year. Can't really get too many starting appearances, but has still been one of Sydney FC's most influential players.
Yeah, his like most of his goal involvements. I think I did the maths, a little while ago. At the midpoint of the season. But yeah, like the massive majority of his goal involvements are off the bench, and he's only started a handful of games, and it's just crazy that he's in the Golden Boot race, can't like still coming off the bench. It's wild. So yeah, exactly. If you've got a formula that's working, and if you're Tale, why would you change that? Obviously there's a certain game plan around it, and he feels like he fits in later, and that's because Segecic is a versatile player and sometimes comes on centrally, sometimes wide, sometimes up top. He's filled in, rotated around on the field so I think Tale likes to read a game before bringing Segecic and working out where Segecic can be deployed best. So I feel like that comes into it as well. And yeah, if you've got that going for you, why would you kind of change it up? But yeah, just in Sydney's season, I think you said the run in compared to Adelaide. Sydney, I don't think that fixture congestion is as big of a problem. I think the inconsistency we've seen this season from them is not because of the squad choices. They've been so bad when they've had their full strength 11. They've been bad with their a rotated squad, and especially that backline gets rotated a fair bit. They're pretty thin there. But I don't think it's just there's not direct correlation between a rotated squad and bad performances, right? Like we've seen there a lot of players come through. Camijo this season, De Jesus has had great games. All of these players can step up and just come into the team seamlessly. So I don't think that rotating the squad is really correlated to their performances. So that works in their favor. They just have to, you got 6 games left to be consistent in a minimum, and so you want it to be these. I do, as you said, Lockie, I'll have my money with you. Thank you. I will put Sydney slightly ahead with this run in, and Adelaide just the shock value of that loss and letting that slip out of their hands a little bit means these games, it's just when it rains it pours. It'll feel like it as soon as they concede a goal against the run of play, they can just crumble, I think, whereas Sydney know that they can come back into games, right? Like that's just been proven. So I'd much rather be Sydney in this situation heading into the end of the season.
I think the advantage that Ufuk Talay now has, Jacob, is that they're entering in to the end game of the season, right? And all the quantities, all the variables are kind of like they kind of know what they need to do. And the phrase end game is a chess reference, right? You start out with the opening, all the pieces are where they're supposed to be, and all the moves are pretty prescribed. Then you get into the mid game, the middle of the season, where teams are going up and down. We have to count buys, and no one really knows what's going on. And you just try to play your best football and hope you come out the other side in a good position. But now we're in the end game, and all of a sudden there's so little games to go. All those variables contract back in on each other, and you're playing for trophies. And okay, we need to win this game, this game, this game. And in the ACL2, which they'll resume competition in this week, they're already in Singapore preparation to play Lion City Sailors. They know they're only one two-legged tie, and then a final away from a trophy. And now that they've beaten Adelaide, they can feel much better about their chances of playing finals. And then it's only 3 games, 1 to 2-legged tie away from an A-League championship as well. So to some extent, you can probably walk into the dressing room if you're Ufuk Talay and say, well, whatever those inconsistencies were, however far away we were, however unlikely we were to make finals, we can just forget about that now because we have 4 games left in the A-League. If we win a few of them, we're going to get in. And all of a sudden, we're really in the hunt for 2 trophies. And that's what it's all about in the end of the day.
Yeah, and speaking to him in the press conference, he definitely seems very aware of the situation that they find themselves in, right? Where it's perhaps not been ideal in the league so far for them this season, and they've lacked that consistency, and they've not been able to find results when, realistically they would have hoped for them. But there's still that positive vibe around the club where it's like, gunning for, and it almost seems an expectation that they're going to make the final. At least that's the vibe that I got speaking to him, speaking to some people from the club, where it's like they fully expect that they can get results over Lion City Sailors over the next couple of games in Asia, and make their way into a final. And they're really sort of gearing up for that, and talking about preparations for it. And yeah, Ufuk was talking about it after the press conference actually. So cameras had all stopped rolling and stuff, and he just was standing around having a chat still for a little while. And it was brought up about all the travel that they're going to have to do over the next couple of weeks and things. And he was discussing basically their entire itinerary and flight details and things like that. But he ended it with, "That's football, isn't it?" And it's like, spot on, right?
Yeah.
Like he's acutely aware that it's not ideal, but if you want to be successful in the game, you're going to end up playing more games because you're in tournaments later, and it's going to lead to fixture congestion. And he doesn't seem too worried about it because, well, I mean, why would you, right? When, as Will touched on, you've got such great squad depth that you can make those rotations, and it doesn't really affect things all that badly. So, yeah. It's a huge run in for Sydney, and I think the other thing as well that they're going to do is they're going to derive confidence from the results they've been getting in Asia. And I think we've seen that in the league recently, where they have been playing a lot better and they've looked much more sort of themselves, or at least what we envisioned they would look like at the start of the season in this back half, because they played well in Asia, and they go, we know what we can do, we know what we're capable of. And one of those players who I think in particular has come even steps from where he started off is Douglas Costa. How he played here against Adelaide was, I mean, it wasn't like he scored a hat trick or anything like that, but the way that single-handedly when he's on the ball, he can turn the game in a moment. It's incredible to watch. There's one instance I believe is in the first half, and he'd switched over to the left wing and he gets the ball early and he's just sort of on one of those meandering dribbles looking for options, and Klamala's making this incisive run in behind and everybody's attention is drawn to him. The two centre-backs immediately draw towards Klamala. The fullback starts to sit off Costa a little bit, anticipating that ball in behind, and Costa, without even looking, just squares the ball perfectly 20 yards to Caceres, who gets the opportunity to get a shot off on goal. It's like, where did he see that from? And it's those little moments of inspiration and confidence that they're going to continue to draw from, that's going to make them a real threat, both in the league and in Asia this season. So I agree with the both of you that I'd put Sydney in ahead of Adelaide, based on form. They look the better team, and they actually, they're one of the teams that I think could do a lot of damage in a final series as well, right? Because they concede a lot of goals, but it's also, that's something itself that Ufuk is like, we're conceding a lot of goals, but also we are still doing things really well defensively. It's about just making sure that we're limiting the damage that those goals do. So making sure they're not coming at points in time where it's going to completely impact our game plan and throw it off and things like that. So yeah, they're going to be a real threat moving forwards. And while they've got a lot of games ahead of them, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because they seem fully prepared and aware of it. So yeah, I'm expecting them to have some good performances moving forwards.
And aware of the importance as well. Tele was doing some media right after their quarterfinal win against Jeonbuk, saying that this home leg, which is the second leg of the semi-final against Lion City, is the biggest game in the club's history. I think they're well aware of what they're trying to do in terms of raising the profile of Asian competition, and for them to be a club that goes on and wins a trophy would be a massive deal for them. So I'm looking forward to that game on Wednesday night. We're going to be doing a live stream over on the YouTube channel as well if you want to come join us. I believe the kickoff is 10 p.m, so it's a bit of a late one, but we'll be there. It's really exciting. And of course, this is all off the back of that Valère Germain, Sanfrecce Hiroshima suspension saga where they played Germain. He wasn't eligible. He was still supposed to be serving a suspension. So the team that Sydney got beaten by twice in the groups in Hiroshima, an administration error essentially has ruled them out of an opportunity to claim a continental crown. So this is a massive opportunity for Sydney coming up in midweek, and hopefully a good result away from home puts them in a commanding position to control their own destiny coming back to Sydney the following week. Jacob, I'm going to come back to you just real quick because Carl Veart as well, where pre-game in his press conference, he mentioned that he doesn't have a contract for 2026 or the 25-26 season, which goes against what we thought we knew. A lot of the media for his most recent contract extension was through to the 25-26 season, but apparently that wasn't all signed on the dotted line. Maybe an option that could or wouldn't, or maybe it's a specific trigger hasn't been met by Veart to extend his time at the club. So rather than just getting rid of him, it's just not going to renew him at the end of the season.
Yeah, it's a weird situation. I believe it was Lucas Ronaldo, Channel 10 News, who first broke that it's an option for that final season. Which, that's nothing new. We see options in contracts all the time for players and coaches. But what's strange is, like you said, everything that the club put out, all of their releases, all of their media, was saying it's absolutely certain that he'll be there to the end of 2026. And that's the belief that everybody in the city had as to his job, and what it was going to look like for the club moving forwards. So the fact that it's now coming out that there was actually an option, and we're still waiting for the full confirmation from the club on that, but it certainly seems that way considering everything Veart said is that he doesn't have that contract for next year. Yeah, it's just a bit strange because it's a club that over the last couple of years has really preached transparency in their communications, with fans and with everybody, and it seems like this is one of those things that's just slipped away a little bit here, which is a bit disappointing to see. And the other interesting thing is then, why is his contract not, why is that option not being taken up on him, right? And you look at the performances, missed finals last year, probably likely to do so again this year, and you go, well, that's probably why. But then Veart himself has made some interesting comments about that and said that he was never aware of any KPIs in his contracts. There were never any expectations. His sole purpose was to help develop young SA players, which he thinks he's done well, and he has done well. So it's, again, there seems to be mixed communications there in terms of what was actually expected of him this season, and whether or not that would give him that extra year on his contract. So it all just seems a little bit of a mess at the moment, behind the scenes at Adelaide. So hopefully that's stuff that can be sort of tidied up, because it's really disappointing to see, because it leaves us, everybody just sort of seems a bit confused as to what's going on. I mean, Veart seems pretty certain that he wants to stay at the club. He's working with the club to try and make that happen. But in terms of why that's the situation in the first place, it's all up in the air at the moment. So presuming more will come out and there will be a statement from the club at some point, but we've not heard anything yet.
Yeah, very interesting. Wait and see. Let's move on. We're going to talk about some other of the kind of, well, I say finals contenders. I think what's really exciting about this season as we're coming towards the end of the regular season is that all of these teams that are making finals, it feels like you can make a genuine case for why they could be champions of the A-League this season. Obviously, we've just hit on Sydney FC, Melbourne Victory with the bye. The Western Sydney Wanderers are a team who I said last week going into this match against Auckland had the potential to really prove their credentials, in this game, right? They've always been a very strong attacking team. They've scored the most goals out of anyone this campaign. Then they were able to pull together a good run of consistent results. And then just going and having that opportunity to then go and do it against Auckland away was the third tick in the box that I think they had to check. And personally, I think they did that. Obviously, it was two kind of goalkeeper errors that led to the goals in this one. The best goal, arguably, was the Kraev offside one, despite the fact that it didn't even count in the first place. I thought that passing combination was pretty cool. But as I mentioned in the intro, the fabulous five of Auckland, you have Paulson, Sakai, Hall, Pinecker, and De Vries. When those five players are played together, they still hadn't conceded a goal all season, and the Wanderers were the first team to do that. So I think there's lots of encouraging signs there, and that Auckland away fixture is the big one that someone is going to have to win if they're going to, stop the Black Knights from claiming the championship. And the Wanderers proved this weekend, I think, that it's definitely within their wheelhouse to do so.
Yeah, 100% they're capable. They showed their credentials in this one. And as you mentioned, the Kraev offside goal, that was just such a slick move between the team. And it's one of those annoying ones where Sapsford, he's offside when the ball's played, but then he comes back in and checks in, behind his team's side of the defender. So he gains an advantage, but he doesn't really. He comes back and he doesn't need to be in that offside position.
Game's gone.
So
just give it.
Game's gone. No, it's just one of those little annoying ones where he doesn't need to be there. So it's unfortunate that they ruled that one out, but it's really that front line and they're pretty fluid in their attacking areas, and that front line has the cohesion now. It took a while to see what they wanted to do going forward this season. It was a bit unclear, and at the start they're playing Borello in a certain way, and they weren't really playing to his strengths early on, and they weren't using Kraev in the right way. Stadge really took a bit of time, I think, to work out Kraev, which is, I think he's been a big key in this, because he links a lot together. and he's really finding his form that he had at the Knicks last season. And yeah, it was a performance that was enough to win it. I think a draw's a fair result in the end. As you mentioned, that backline is has been strong, and the team that does get Auckland in the finals, will have to do this. And then yeah, as you said, Western Sydney Wanderers definitely showed that they're capable. And just with Milanovic's goal there, I know you said two keeping errors, Lockie. Obviously Lawrence Thomas had a slip when he was trying to clear his lines. That was a big one, even though he did make up for it with a great save from Max Matter's bicycle kick as well. That was a fantastic save. But Paulson, I think I heard the commentator say with Milanovic's goal that the sun got in his eyes. I think that was 100% Pantazopoulos' run over the ball, and he was onside, right? So he came. He stayed on side to do that and had a dummy run. But when you get a player like that kind of just jumping over the ball, that delayed Paulson for just a second. And that just, I know the feeling of it, and it just gets in your head enough to stop your first movement where Paulson looked like he was just getting down to a pretty routine save. But that's definitely enough to maybe you think Pantazopoulos will get a slight touch on it, and your body your brain just does it automatically, where you freeze because you have to set up, oh, maybe I have to go left now. So that was definitely the cause of that. I think the sun being an issue is generally a problem when the ball's above the eye line. That's when the sun becomes a bigger factor. And so yeah, I definitely think that even though we won't beat, Pantazopoulos should be credited with the assist for that one. But yeah, Thomas, unfortunate error for his. I mean, he gets up to try and make the recovery save, but it's a great finish in the end. And yeah, another two of the league's best keepers for sure making errors in this one. So I'm sure we'll see them as we discussed before, the coaches ideas of keeping their keepers in the starting 11. So I'm sure we'll both see that those keepers keep their places as should be the case in the next couple of fixtures.
For sure. Jacob, we've had the conversation about Auckland and the premiership race and the points cap and whatever so many times. So we're not going to do that again today. But these recent run of draws they've had, so in their last 5, draws to Adelaide, Newcastle, Central Coast, and the Wanderers as well. Does that leave some doubts in your head about their championship potential? Because we've said this all season, they're a club that the consistency in their player base and the way they've been able to lock down games really lends them to the regular season and being able to be consistent. And, especially in this season of the A-League where everything is so tight, really establish themselves towards the top end of the table. But when it comes to finals, they're going to get a bye to the second round. So that's 2 legs. That works in their favour. But then it comes to a grand final. It's just 90 minutes of football. In that month, they've kind of shown a little bit weakness that not in every 90-minute game they can close out the game so convincingly.
And I think it's the Adelaide and the Mariners draws in particular are the ones that I look towards as being big indicators, and probably a lot of the clubs in that top 6 are looking at those games as well, going, this is clear evidence of what we need to do to be able to get those results right. Because the Adelaide one, it shows that we've praised this Auckland defence so much this season for good reason, but they are not completely invulnerable, right? Like you can score goals against this team if you go about it the right way. And then the Mariners one, their whole sort of thing this season has been about grinding out draws and getting those results in weird games. Whereas what are they up to now? 10 draws this season or something? It's like
10. Yep.
Yeah, 10 draws. That's been their whole sort of MO this season, is just getting those draws. And it's like, if you set out with a game plan to try and shut Auckland down, it's shown. Even if you're a team like the Mariners who haven't had a great season, you can still get a result against them. So I think those two in particular teams are going to sort of use perhaps as blueprints, especially if they can, in a double-legged semi-final or something like that, right? If they can get a result in one of those legs, they know they can grind out a result and really stop Auckland from doing a lot of damage. So yeah, it's fine for their premiership, like you said, because they've got that points gap. They're cruising along to it, and it's not like they're losing games and dropping points. Dropping 6-pointers rather to teams below them. But it's definitely not a good look heading into finals. But then Auckland fans will be saying, yeah, but we're not losing, right? So we're still able to stick in games, and then you give us extra time, or we go to penalties or whatever, and maybe we can turn it into a win. And that's certainly true. But obviously we don't know what a team looks like an extra time until they actually have to go there and do it. But one thing you would give the credit to Auckland for is that they do have a very deep and very strong squad. So you would hazard a guess that, you know, even if they have to go late into a game, some of the subs that they can make to bring on will still be able to have an impact. But yeah, there's definitely quite a few teams, I think, in that top six now that'll be licking their lips a little bit. You know, obviously Western have already beaten Auckland this season. So if they come up against them in the finals, there's the possibility there. We just saw a really good performance from the Wanderers, so you know, that's another team. And then Sydney, who we were praising just before for their squad depth and their ability to be a real wild card into the final series, would be another one I'd be looking at as being able to get that result. So yeah, recent run of form for Auckland has not been, you know, massively confidence inspiring perhaps, but you know, it's also a case of they went through a little bit of a slump like this earlier in the season, which is what allowed Adelaide to catch up originally, but then they obviously broke through it with a few good results. So maybe they're just getting some of this bad stuff out of the way before finals kicks in, and then, you know, that old thing of, you know, you want to get your bad performances out of the way so you have a clean run in finals. Maybe they've prescribed to that, and that's what they're doing now. But yeah, it's definitely an indicator that teams are able to get results against them.
So the closest competition for that premiership and I guess the leader for this Champions League elite spot is Western United. Their win against who was it? Perth Glory, 3-1 win, made it their fifth win in a row, which is a club record for their history in terms of consecutive wins, which is very impressive. Will, for John Aloisi's side, they've been this team that it's almost quite hard to put your finger on, but just the addition of Hiroshi Ibisuki, Noah Botic coming out and scoring goals for fun has just led them to a really impressive season. You've got Reece Bozanovsky, who's scored 4 and 3 now as well. So many other players making meaningful impacts. It's really cool to see. And again, look, just looking down this whole list, they're another one of these sides that you just kind of think, well, at their best, who's going to beat them? But then you've got the other 5 sides. It's like, well, all of these sides at their best beat every single other on an average day, right? Which just makes it so exciting. It's going to be so close in this run home.
Yeah, I think that's why this has been the best season probably for a while. I think a lot of people would say is just that, yeah, as you mentioned, everyone can beat everyone in that top 6, and it feels like the quality is so high. It's not, you know, top heavy as it has been in the past, and this Western side just keep finding a way to do it. As you said, I think in this game, honestly, they were probably the second best side. I think Perth always, if you just wait long enough, you know, they'll give you a freebie kind of thing, and yeah, they definitely gave them an early one. No fault of their own. It was a good finish from Bozanovsky on his second attempt, but you know, they got in second minute and you know, started early, started strong, and it's so hard to come back from that. But Perth did come back, which I thought was really impressive. But you know, the sign of a good team and you know, a championship contender, a premiership contender as well, is that they do win these kind of games where they are, you know, I would say they were second best. They scored a late goal through Michael Roos and just to inflate the score a little bit. There was an absolute calamity for Western's second goal to put them ahead. Like, I don't think they didn't kill Perth as so many teams this year have. They didn't really just like put them to bed or they weren't massively on top. So the scoreline doesn't really reflect this one, but that is the mark of a winning side, that they can just remain a threat like that. And yeah, it's as you said, Lockie, it's really hard to put your finger on what exactly has come together this season, but just really, you know, consistent input from so many cogs in this machine that have made this formidable side, and that run in is just looking so tasty. That final match day against Auckland, I hope it comes down to that last day. I want to see that as the decider for the premiership. That would be amazing. So you know, second season in a row, it would come down to the last day as well. I really am hoping for that, and with Auckland's, you know, run of draws, it really could happen. So no matter what, you know, it's exciting, and it's good that they got the 3 points in this one as well, just to keep them within a sniff and really kick them on in these next couple of fixtures.
Yeah, it's tasty, isn't it? I will say, as much as I still do believe that Auckland have this premiership pretty tightly wrapped, we're now in a territory where just one more draw for Auckland with a Western win means we're only 3 points away, and the goal difference is very tight, which means if we did take that down to the final day, it would be up for grabs. So it's getting a little bit tighter than I reckon most Auckland fans would have wanted. The other team in and around is of course Melbourne City, a very professional, I'd say, 1-0 win over the Central Coast Mariners from Aurelio Vidmar's side. Nice training ground move. Once again through the brilliance of Marco Tilio as well, putting that ball in. So they go along quite nicely. Another win for their pretty impressive recent run of form, which pretty much puts a gap to the Wanderers and Victory behind in terms of that race for second as well. So that looks like it's going down to Western United and Melbourne City, which selfishly, for the coefficient, I kind of hope Melbourne City get up, just because I think they're more likely to be able to replace and rejuvenate.
I agree. Although imagine teams having to come on down to Tarniat for their games in the Asian Champions League. Does that play a factor into it? Where it's like, where's the stadium?
That would be fun. Unfortunately, I don't think that would fit AFC requirements. I think they'd just have to play out at Amy Park.
Amy Park, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. That would be elite, actually. Just imagine, Yokohama FM. Well, they're actually not doing too well. Imagine, Kevin Muscat, Shanghai Port coming down to Tarniat for a Champions League Elite Day. That would be great. So they're all the top 6 teams. I do actually want to just quickly touch on the Bulls as well, because they absolutely killed Brisbane Roar the other night, despite going down 1-0 early on. And I think, they're only 1 point away from the 6th. They are a game ahead. So, the likes of Sydney and Adelaide are going to have that opportunity to push ahead. I believe that midweek. They're ahead. Anyway, the buys are hard to keep track of. But I think what they did show on Friday night, Jacob, is a lot of optimism. And it's taken them a little while, but it feels like Stayovsky has found a way to mould this squad after coping with all the losses that January brought with it. You've got Saif, who came in and made 2 really nice assists to contribute to Marin Jakulic's hat-trick. And you've got Harry Sawyer, who's starting to click into gear with some goals as well. Obviously, he's a different profile of striker that we've talked about. But I think it lends itself really well to the idea that Stayovsky can be quite versatile in how he wants to play his football, and not necessarily week to week changing things up too much, but building a building a team out of the squad he has, and picking up those kind of moneyball signings like Marin Jakulic, Luke Bratton were 2 players that were discarded by their A-League sides at the start of the season, and good experience. This isn't like an Adelaide United Central Coast Mariners story. It's not a whole lot of youth. There's a little bit, which we'll get to, but it's mostly experienced pieces, and being able to come in and get a result like this, I think just shows that they're going to be forced to be reckoned with next season. I think it is still a bit too late, but obviously a very important season next year as well, because they're going to be back in the AFC Champions League 2 as well. So a big year for that club.
Yeah, and if they can try and keep things relatively sorted off field, unlike they have done this season, that's going to be, because you can't understate how big losing players like Valejaman and Davila at the start of the season has been, right? Because they're 2 key components, 2 of those experienced players that you kind of want in your squad, and that are going to deliver week in, week out for you. So yeah, having a calm, peaceful off season, uneventful, a chance to really keep that core group together, and add pieces where you can, it's going to be invaluable for them. And Stayovsky's there's been a lot of questions over him as well this season, and is he the right person moving forwards? But I think what we've seen recently, like you said, it's sort of a vibe shift almost, where it's like there's a bit of feeling there amongst the squad that there might be something that sort of works with what they're trying to do. So yeah, I think that they've got a really good thing, and I think it goes to show, you mentioned sort of the comparison to Adelaide and the Mariners. I think it's these 2 sort of almost rivaling philosophies that are going to start to spring up in the A-League now, right? Where you have youth are important no matter what, but it's about how you use them. With Adelaide and the Mariners, it's you're relying on them. They are the core part of your squad, your youth players, how many you can get in key positions and how good they're going to be. Whereas for MacArthur, they're the supplementary pieces, right? You have that experienced core of players who know what they're doing, your Brattons, your Marin Jakulic's, right? And then you're supplementing that with these key youth players or younger players who can come in and have an impact, and where there's perhaps a little bit less pressure on them to perform week in, week out. For all three of those clubs so far this season, not quite panned out either way. So maybe there is some middle ground still between those to find that's the sweet spot. But it'd be interesting to see how they go next year, because it's going to be, their squad is going to be less volatile, I suppose, because a lot of the pieces that would have been sold in the upcoming transfer window was sold last time round, right? So they sort of, a lot of those players that might leave have already left anyway. So you're just looking forward to the future anyway now. Whereas for clubs like the Mariners and for Adelaide, there are some players there that you earmark that could probably get moves in the upcoming transfer window, and then they've got to start from scratch again in those positions next season. So yeah, the Bulls definitely look like they're in a decent position moving forwards. And like I said, it's just about finding stability off the pitch, because that's been something that's completely ruined their season, I think. And Paletti, I know, has said the same sort of thing a couple of times as well, where it's like, when you're having all that going on, it's impossible not to be distracted by it. And I think that's exactly what's happened here. And like you said, with Asian football on the menu for them next year as well, and with Sydney proving that you can make deep runs in that competition, there's going to be more incentive for them to keep that core group around who they know could get a job done, and finding those pieces that are going to work with them. So it'll be exciting to see what they do moving forwards. And actually, you mentioned they're obviously a point off of the six, and they're they're a game or two ahead of others, but between them and Adelaide, honestly, I'm picking MacArthur still to finish ahead of Adelaide at this point. I just think that they've found a little bit more consistency now in this season, and are starting to find some results. And I don't think it's likely that they jump Sydney for the six, but they'd be more likely to do so than Adelaide, I think.
Fair enough. Well, and next year, going into the new season, they might have to deal without the likes of Killy Adamson, because Scottish journalist Anthony Joseph, Sky Sports over in the UK, has reported that QPR have made an actual offer among interest from a number of other English Championship clubs. He had a great assist for Marin Jakulic's third goal on the weekend. He's probably been... It was funny. It was who was it? It was Vince and Tommy Orr on... what's the show? Total A-Leagues. They did their Trans-Tasman... starting 11s for the A-League this season. And I think Vince was saying it was actually really hard to find an Australian or a Kiwi right back that has been really consistent throughout the whole season. And I was thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, Killy Adamson has got to be probably right up there in terms of the right backs, the Australian right backs that are on offer at the moment. So he's made a really good impact, and it looks like, as kind of our first little off-season transfer rumour to come through, looks like he might be getting some interest overseas. So we'll have to see where he comes out. Of course, in action, quite literally, as we are recording this episode, the Matildas are playing in their second friendly against South Korea. It is currently the 53rd minute. We are 1-0 up thanks to a Mary Fowler goal. Very happy to see her back in the starting lineup. I guess, of course, the Paletti and Burke over on the Dubcast will talk about this in a lot more depth if you want some more in-depth Tilly's chats. But hopefully this is going to be kind of the end of this coachless purgatory the women's national team have been sitting in for a little while now, and just getting their groove back a little bit, because after the She Believes Cup, there was a lot of negativity around the side, which is, that's professional sport. It's what happens. But, I know Alana Kennedy was speaking before the series. They just kind of wanted to return back to those Matildas that people fell in love with during the World Cup. And they seem to have a little bit more skip in their step. They've had some, good performances here. Having the lead over Korea after their 1-0 win on Friday night seems a pretty good start.
Yeah. This is definitely about getting the goodwill back on the fans back on their side, and they're doing a good job, and happy to be back in this window here, playing in Sydney and Newcastle. So two spots they haven't been to for a little bit, and the fans are turning out, it looks like, and definitely they did in the Sydney game as well, which is good. And even if the performances aren't at the level that we know they can be, in this coachless position, basically, getting a couple of wins here is great for morale and great for the yeah, great to get the fans back on side and the media really pulling back in their direction as well, which is super important. And just want to note the away kit at home is a bit, I find that a bit village. Even though I love it, I do love the away kit. It does look good, and I have been keeping my eye on this game. Mary Fowler with a great finish to open the scoring there. Hopefully we can hold on to this one and yeah, grab two nice wins and important ones, moving forward.
And, in some other Australian news, Jacob, I know, being Arsenal fans, we're hoping that the girls can go and beat Lyon in the Champions League semi-final in a few weeks' time. Not just because that would be great, and there are a lot of Aussies playing for Arsenal at the moment, but just to get Joe Montemuro out of the competition. So he's
back in the discussion.
Yeah,
for the
his
Matildas
season
job,
will
yeah.
finish a little bit, just a few days earlier. He doesn't have to go play that European final, so he can come back and coach the Tillies. I think the writing's on the wall there, but hopefully that can happen sooner rather than later. The other national team in action are the Joeys. They've kicked off their under-17 Asian Cup campaign with a 1-1 draw thanks to against Vietnam, thanks to a Quinn McNichol long-range beauty after he quite controversially had a penalty ruled out. It was one of those ones where it hits the crossbar and the spin of the ball kind of pops it out, and it's hard to tell whether it's fully across the line or not. It appeared to have, but no VAR in the competition. The goal was denied. So that finishes 1-1 rather than a Joey's win. So walking a little bit of a tightrope at the moment. By the time you're listening to this, they will have also played against the UAE, which they will have really needed to win to give themselves a good chance of getting out the group and qualifying for the World Cup as well, knowing that they have Japan in that final game. So it's all they have to do is get out of the group to get to that World Cup. So the barrier kind of is low, but a small slip up, Jacob, and we won't spend too long on this because we know the information will be outdated very shortly, but
Yes.
they have to get moving a little bit.
They do. It's they're taking a leaf out of the senior side's playbook of making things tight and difficult for themselves, and having everything to play for a few games. Now, best of luck to him. Great to see Quinn McNichol on the score sheet. He's somebody who, coming into the season, Brisbane Roar fans were really picking out as one to watch, and maybe hasn't quite had the chance in the A-League to make a name for himself, but he's proving his talent here. So he's definitely one to make sure that we keep an eye out for moving forwards. And for the Joeys themselves, huge game against the UAE. I would normally say, you're feeling pretty confident about it, but knowing that they really need that win, it just adds that extra element of doubt to the equation. And while it's a good side and we know that they can get results, it just takes moments like happened in that Vietnam game where you get a goal ruled out and all of a sudden things, swing against you. So, it's going to be a tough one, a really difficult match, but hopefully they can get that job done because, it's a chance to get into the World Cup and for the under-17 sides as well. That's, obviously the World Cup's a huge tournament for anyone, but for the under-17 sides really, really buy into the under-17 World Cup. I mean, the countries that participate take it really, really, really seriously, and I'm sure that it would be no different with the Joeys. So, a massive opportunity to come up against literally the best young players in the world. You can't pass up that opportunity to test yourself and prove, the growth that we are experiencing in Australia on the world stage. So, fingers crossed they can get that job done. And like you said, by the time that it's all said and done, I've said this and you've listened to it all, we'll probably know, but no, best of luck to them.
Just as a quick aside, it just struck me as odd as we were talking about that given Quinn McNichol made his professional debut in last season's Australia Cup, but given all the struggles of the Brisbane Roar, he's only appeared 3 times for very small minutes off the bench.
And everyone talks so highly of him as well.
Yeah. Anyway,
what's going on there?
Maybe next season. Next season's the breakout year for Quinn McNichol,
right.
I'm sure. And just finally, before we sign off, many of you probably will have heard that Robbie Thompson and Daniel McBreen have decided to park the A-League off-air podcast for the foreseeable future. After I think it was about a season and a half, they gave it. We just kind of wanted to say we'll express our sadness at that particular piece of news. Like many of you listening, I'm sure they were pretty much our number one listen after each weekend's action, and that comes off the back of SEN dropping the global game as well. So another unfortunate blow to the A-League media landscape. We'll do our best to try and fill the gap, but it's getting pretty large now, Will.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a lot of people in the comments saying, they were one of the only ones to do it. They were the only ones I listened to. I mean, we're still knocking about. But really upsetting. Like, lovely guys, and yeah, especially we had a big chat with Robbie Thompson and Unite Round, and that was awesome. And they're just such lovely guys. The two of them, I love their duo, and they can get a lot higher caliber of guests than we can. Maybe we can there's a few more openings after they've cleared the airways for us to come through. Maybe we can borrow their their notebooks off them, their directory, and have a few phone numbers hanging around for us to use. But really sad news, and it shows a bit of an insight into the state of the affairs right now around the media coverage and independent coverage of the league. So the more the merrier always. So hope to see them maybe get missed it a fair bit and maybe change their tune in the future.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, in all seriousness, Robbie and Danny have been quietly encouraging of us from a distance as well. So we appreciate their support, and of course they're still involved in football. They're commentating on the A-League every weekend, so we'll still get to hear them, which is great. But that will do for this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. Will Booth, you survived all the way through for the full hour. Congratulations.
I dit it. I'm testing your editing skills with a few brain fades there and a few trail off on my sentences, but hopefully you can make me sound a lot more coherent than I actually was. So glad to make the effort, and it was a good episode as always.
Well, if you're listening and you haven't noticed anything, that means I've done a good job. So hopefully we can get to that point. Cheers, Jacob.
Thank you very much, Lockie.
All right, we'll be back on Friday. Of course, don't forget the live stream Wednesday night as well for the Sydney FC Champions League 2 semi-final first leg against Lion City Sailors. It's a massive game. It's really hard to understate.
Huge.
We'll be back on Friday to discuss it all in great depth, I'm sure. But thank you again for listening. We appreciate your company. Goodbye.